vast wasteland of entertainment where radio has become obsolete stands an embittered man teetering at the edge of sanity. With help from radio friends, he's about to embark on a global mission that would change the course of history as we know it. Broadcasting live from the secret studios on the banks of the Brandywine River in Delaware is Mitchell K.C. Hill. And up to the Great White North in Vancouver is Alexander Knight.
And here we are with show number 19 of The Last Angry DJ. I am The Last Angry DJ, or at least one of them. My name is Mitchell K.C. Hill. That's my nickname from my radio days. And I also have my very good friend and co-pilot, Mr. Alexander Knight. Say hi, Alexander.
Hey, how's it going, Mitch?
It's going. I think we both had a little misfire there. I forgot to hit the mic to turn my mic on, God forbid. And the lower third came up.
I live for the misfires.
Yeah, the misfire. You know what? Here's the thing on our show, especially when it's just the two of us, is we call it keeping it real, which means that if we screw up, we're going to call it out and say, hey, we screwed up. We did something stupid. In fact, our RFI is on Discord if you want to go and see it when we write up ourselves. Like, you know, you did great here, you did bad there, or your QR code popped in at a weird time, whatever. It's one of those weird things.
Yeah,
Is
exactly.
your QR code up?
Yeah, I got the QR code up there if people feel like it. Thank you very much to everybody for joining us today. I just wanted to say, this is the Last Angry DJ. This is the show where we talk with luminaries in the broadcast world. We talk about technology and anything adjacent to the broadcast world. And of course, not just old broadcasts, but also I'd like to think new media as well. But today we don't have a guest. It's just Mitch and myself. So we're really looking forward to chatting about some stuff. I actually just want to say, before we get started here, that a very legendary broadcaster, Canadian broadcaster, Rick Clough, just recently passed away. I think he was 74. He's in his mid-70s and had an incredible career as a sports broadcaster for over 40 years. And he retired twice, I believe. He came back for a while and then did more on the radio for another 20 years and then retired again. So he had a bit of a comeback and then left us. So I just wanted to mention that because he was very influential to a lot of people in the industry and a lot of people looked up to him. So
and our thoughts and prayers go out to him and his family. Of course, he can't hear us anymore unless we're praying to the great beyond. But it's also great that you're recognizing people in the Canadian provinces because we sometimes forget that there's another country to our north, and there's a whole different radio thing going on up there. And there is something going on down here, and we share a lot of different cities. Like, you know, in radio, if you're talking about Canada, you're usually just talking about, like, you know, Detroit and where is CKLW? I guess that's in Windsor, Ontario, Canada, and some of the other areas. And if you're out west where you are, what stations do you share listening with in Vancouver and actually Port Coquitlam where you are? Mm-hmm. Where else do you listen? Seattle?
You know, there's a radio station in Seattle that I really like, and we can talk about this a little bit. But before I mention the U.S. radio station, for me, for music stations, CFOX and Rock 101 are two of the biggest radio stations that we have here, and they're still fairly influential. They're not quite what they were, at least in my opinion, mainly because of the personalities. All my favorite heroes, my favorite personalities have left, and they haven't been there for a while. But there's a radio station just south of me in Seattle, I think is doing an incredible job with sort of modernizing how I think what modern radio really should be doing with the video component of things. You know, we see some radio stations kind of just hacking away at it, trying to do video, but none of them really doing a great job. And the radio station that I'm talking about, and I'm forgetting the call letters right now. They're just south of
K
us.
something.
It's WKXP something. I can't remember. I should have prepared for this.
They can't have
this is why
not
preparation
many
is
W's.
key. See, if I was on a radio station, I'd be fired because I didn't prepare and I didn't remember the call letters of the radio
We're
station.
keeping it real, my friend.
We're
It's
keeping-
like it could be anything. That's just what we do.
Exactly.
And
So
here's a funny story that I have to say, and then I'm going to ask you a question that relates to it because I'm interested in your. I think you might be a music snob, which means somebody that's very particular about what they like and don't like. When I came back on the radio in the '90s and I was doing the morning show, this program director I had, Mike Summers, who's now passed away, but used to pop in and say, "Who's the artist that's playing?" And I could never say, "I have no idea." He'd come in and say, "What? You're the morning DJ at the #1 rated radio station and radio show, and you don't even know what you're playing?" I'm like, Keisha, I don't know what I'm playing. And he said, "No, that's not who's playing right now." I mean, if it was a '70s or an '80s artist, I could nail it right away. But for some reason, if I'm not into current music, and I wasn't then, and I'm not now. So where do you kind of? You're saying you have a station in Seattle that you like. What kind of music do they play? Are they eclectic? Are they progressive? What are they?
I got the name now. So it's KEXP in Seattle, and they spent a sizable amount of money on building this incredible studio. I would encourage everybody, if you haven't looked at it yet, go to the KEXP YouTube station because they've built this incredible room where they shoot these really high quality music videos. They invite all artists of all types, usually independent, bands for any from folk to rock to pop, but they're in this all black room with this incredible LED backlight. It's not an LED wall, but they've got these LEDs all behind them and they look incredible. I don't know what cameras they're using, but it's very well shot and it sounds really good. And they do tours there. You can actually go there and watch the show. You can watch bands live. So they've invested a lot in having this incredible space where the public can actually go to and look at these fantastic bands. And so I think those guys are doing a really good job. And I don't know anybody else that's really doing that. So kudos to them.
Is the background like a Starfield?
Yeah,
Like sparklies?
yeah. It's sort of.
Do you know
like
the
that.
guy? I know the guy that invented that. Or
Really?
at least invented the original. His name is Idis Gumbitas, and he's right here in Delaware. Used to be at a company called Mainlight Industries, and he was the first one to invent the LED fiber optic Starfield that they use in Vegas and a lot of places like that. The thing you're talking about that a lot of radio stations are using now is what they refer to as a performance studio, and they didn't have them back in the day when I was on the radio, but today. If you're going to have YouTube or you're going to have a social media component, you want a place where the visiting artist can perform, and that means a small studio, not maybe a huge studio, but a small studio where they can show off. So, performance studios is the thing of today, and it takes a lot of money to do that because if you're going to make a video-friendly, social media-friendly room, it's not the regular old radio studio because most radio studios are not video-friendly. Yeah, that's cool. I see it on your preview there. Why don't you pop it in over top of me so people can see it?
Yeah. So here's an example.
That
Looks really good.
that might not be Idis's setup, but that's a cool, nice background to be using.
I wonder what cameras they're using here because it looks very sharp. And they must have good lighting because the people's faces are very, very well lit. Is that hard to do, to get someone's face really well lit with incredibly dark black background like that?
No, not really. In fact, it's harder to bring the background up against a well-lit front light. Like I'm kind of, presented high. I'm sort of like a broadcast white look, all over my face. I look pretty pale and deadly or whatever. But to get that look you're talking about is a cinematic look, so you need a camera that has a decent piece of glass on it and one that can either do a bokeh or has a depth of field on it that allows you to have that contrast. The other thing is lighting. If you're going to do some lighting that's dramatic, let me show you the difference between I have kind of flat lighting on me, but if you're going to do what's called clamshell,
would you
I'm just
call
gonna
your lighting broadcast lighting, where you're more evenly lit?
Look at me now.
Oh yeah, that's
this is more of a clamshell. You got the difference between here, and that's more cinematic in its presentation. This is more broadcast, where you have everybody at the same lighting level.
No,
and if you go to CNN or Fox,
don't they call that Rembrandt lighting, where you get that contour dark, like half split down the middle on one side?
There's a lot of. I mean, it's like Rembrandt paintings. I call it clamshell.
Yeah,
because you got the difference. I think it's kind of cool and dramatic. Yeah. But it sometimes backfires and it's done poorly. If you're doing a standard 3-point lighting, let me start from scratch. I'll just turn everything off for a second and show you what it looks like when you don't have everything.
The listeners and viewers can watch.
Yeah, so they can see how it builds up.
Yeah.
And now I'm turning off. Now, if I turn my key light off, watch what happens.
This is where DMX would be.
All you're seeing now, I know I look dark, so don't complain. This is just the background lighting that I have in the room, and as you can see, the background kind of takes over. But you would never use this in a show unless it was a horror show of some kind. So you start out with the 3-point light. You've got one bright light, which is my key light, and in my case, that happens to be a light panel, Gemini. It's a single 1x1, and you can adjust. You can adjust a lot of things on it. You can adjust the color temperature so you get a nice look to it. And that gives you more of a clamshell, more cinematic, but it's not really what they go on broadcast. So the next thing I would do if I were adding lighting is I would use a side light. You want to hit yourself with a light from this side, and that's what that does. That sort of brings the hair up a little bit here, and your face is a little more flat. And then if you want to take it one more step, is you could put a little, I call it a hair light, but if I turn that on, it's behind me. Watch what it does to my hair. Doink.
Oh, yeah.
It just does
it's
that little.
It's subtle.
Yeah, it's supposed to be subtle. So that's basic 3-point lighting, and you can adjust it the way you want to. And then in my background, I've got a big LED, a 6-foot LED nanlight that's hanging, and it's throwing a wash behind me. That's this guy right here. Doink. And then everything else is like a practical effect, like the Duro meters, which are showing my little music server.
I love those. I'm jealous of those. They're expensive.
Those are stupid expensive eye candy
$1,000 for those
that are barely seen. I think yours looks great, by the way, and a hell of a lot cheaper than the $2,000 I spent for
the American DJ $100 LED, which by the way does not look very good in focus, but out of focus looks kind of neat out of focus, right? That's my secret. $100 American DJ decibel meter is what they call it.
And when I say practical lighting, I'm saying all the little things like, the light reflecting, on-air light reflecting on my console here. I've got a broadcast radio switcher. The curtains I've got hanging. The U87 microphone, that big boy right there. Right. Super expensive.
What console is that you said is a broadcast console? Is that a Wheatstone?
It's a Wheatstone Audiotronics, not Audiotronics. It's a
fully analog. It's
Audio
not,
Arts.
Is it a hybrid? Is there any?
It's
digital
a hybrid.
component?
It's an early hybrid. It's got the first 4 channels are analog and everything else is digital. And if I had my spare camera, which is not hooked up right now, I'd show you how all the inputs work on it. But it's a typical broadcast console because I've still got it in my head I'm on the air, even though I'm not. So there you go. And then there's a couple things behind me that say that I'm a radio guy or a broadcaster. I've got a, expensive Sockler tripod behind me. Again, a piece of gear. I've never used it. It's been sitting there for 3 years. And it's like a $4,000 tripod and fluid head.
Oh, I was going. Wow, it's okay. That's more money than I was thinking. Oh, that's probably maybe $1,500 tripod, but $4,000.
You can buy them for $1,500. You can go get a small rig, and it would probably look just as good as that thing does. But if I brought that in, closer, then you would know why it's super expensive. It's what the guys. If you're going out, it's like when the news crews are in town covering some high profile case downtown at the lawyers or at the courthouse. You see all the news people come out with all these things, and they're all using expensive ones like this because they have to take a beating and keep on ticking. So
right. And
there's a lot of stuff, a lot of tools in our trade.
Yeah, and I don't know who this is, but someone named Show Productions in the chat was asking if we can continue the conversation of the ZVE10 and the FX3 comparisons. Well, as far as I know, the ZVE10 and even the second generation one, which by the way just came out, so I haven't really had time to look at the specs, but that is an APS-C sensor, which is not exactly, but close to a Super 35 sensor. Now, Mitch's camera that he's on right now, and he's showing, for those on the YouTube stream, he is showing the ZVE10, the Mark 1, but the actual camera that he's on right now is the FX3, which is a full-frame camera, which is not to be confused with the FX30, which is a Super 35, which is a smaller sensor.
I suspect that Shoji is Robert Shoji, who's a documentarian out there, and he's probably interested in less expensive. I'll tell you, Robert, the sweet spot, if you do a lot of documentaries, is an FX3, like I've got here, and an FX30. And you could cut between the two. The only difference in quality between them is the sensor size and low light conditions and things. If you're going to do special effects, I would lean towards the FX3. But if I were to travel up the ladder of Sony cinematic lenses and cameras, I would start at the FX30, go to the FX3, then to the FX6, and then beyond there you can go to all the way up to the Venice 2.
Now, Mitch, when we're talking about, I mean, if you stay within the FX line, the cinema line, I understand that that they're all going to look, similar, or maybe they're exact because they're using the same color signs. But on a camera like the ZVE10, I mean, can you get S-Cinetone? Do you have to color match those cameras if you had a ZVE10 and an FX3 together, or do you find that they're very, very close in terms of color quality?
You're going to have to match any two cameras, even if they're the same name, because there's slight differences between all of them and the glass you put on it. I would love to have my friend Tom Shustak, who works at Red Star as a rental house. He is a camera genius, and he could tell you so much more than I can. But to answer your question, there are some situations where you can use two cameras from two different families, and they would match pretty well. Like an FX3 will match with an FX6, which will match, not too well. But if you get into those low light levels and you get on the edge of what the sensors are going to do, or how fast the glass is that you're using, this is what I know, then you're going to start to see little gremlins pop into it. So if you're shooting a movie, it makes a big difference. If you're doing a webcast like we are, not that big a deal. Like I'm even thinking of switching my main camera from my FX3 to my ZVE10, which is the Mark 1, which just got replaced with the new one. One thing you know about Sony cameras is if you buy one, I guarantee you within 6 months they're going to have some other version of it, and you're going to slap yourself and say, "Oh man, I just saved up for that. Now they've replaced it." But
what about
I think the
heat
ZVE10 is fine for most of the stuff you'd want to do.
Yeah. Well, what about heat concerns? Because that's always been a problem in the A6000 series, for example. Has had a lot of problems, even plugged into power.
Here's what
and the FX series have a fan in them, so the FX series is less problem.
Not all of them. Not the FX30 does not have a fan in it, to the best of my knowledge. Here's the deal: is that DSLR cameras, I think Canon started this, and maybe even somebody else, I can't recall off the top of my head. They were able to get the shutter speed and the camera to take pictures fast enough to make video. Like probably started out at like 15 frames, something like that. And they could say, "Hey, look at my still camera can go," and get a quasi-quality video out of it. And that all kind of changed when they went from mirrorless cameras or DSLR cameras, where the product became more of a hybrid. It was like stills and video. And the A series, the Alpha series, I think in the Sony line, were hybrid cameras. They could do a little. They were pretty good still cameras, and they were okay film or video cameras. And then the FX means that this baby is optimized for video. You can tell from the controls that are on it, the settings, the setups, the presets, like you mentioned, S-Cinetone, which is a Sony product. It's basically a LUT that you run in the camera. The more power they have, the more likely they are to be optimized for video. When you have a hybrid camera that's trying its darndest to get a high frame rate, let's say 15 or 20 frames,
Right.
it's going to generate heat, and it's got the older CPUs in it. So some of those other cameras, after an hour or two, they're toast. They're gonna say, that's all I can take. I can't take no more, and they're going to shut down. This ZVE10 will probably shut down if I left it on for 2 or 3 hours, particularly if I was pushing the frame rate up high and I was pushing the camera to work hard. If it had a preset, if I was shooting RAW, something like that, you're really pushing the CPU on the camera, and that generates heat, and that's what causes the camera to slow down.
I think it would be an interesting experiment to use the ZVE 10 that you got as a webcam plugged into the power supply, and in a controlled in-studio environment like yours, where it's not going to be sweltering hot. I imagine it's probably going to be fairly stable, right? I mean, it's one thing to use it like you're saying. If you're using it out in the field in the summer, it's not designed for the rigors of cinema work where it has to work. But I imagine at 1080p 30 frame rates per second inside a studio environment, it's probably going to be fine, right?
Yeah, you start taking things away that generate heat, like an active battery. Batteries generate heat when they discharge. They make heat. One of the laws of thermodynamics. You're going to have it. If you go with a dummy battery, which most of the Sony cameras, they really don't like you doing it, but you do it anyhow, you don't have a source of heat because it's a dummy battery. It's just there to make the connection, and then you plugged it in. Some Sony cameras, I don't know, we're going on to this because some people in the radio business, particularly today, like you started out saying earlier, it's my disclaimer, are trying to do more and more videos. So that's why we're talking video, since we're on the subject.
Right.
But anyhow, if you're using a dummy battery with an external power supply, the camera's going to run longer before it overheats because you're not charging the battery and you're not discharging the battery. And some of the more recent cameras, like the FX3 that I'm using right now, has a fan in the back of it so that you could be doing a cinema shooting all day long, even at a high frame rate. If you're doing RAW or something like that, you're really pushing the CPU, so you need a way to get the heat out of it. Cool thing about the FX3, which is sort of the starting point of the Cinalta line of Sony cameras, is that I've never heard the fan come on. It might come on. Even if it did, I don't hear it. But if you have a AP series, I'm not the expert on this.
APS-C?
APS-C, that's the sensor. I'm talking about the A series Sony cameras.
Oh.
We should get Josh Kaufman on here. He's a expert on that. You're going to be, again, you're pushing a camera that's really meant for still, that's a hybrid doing this, so you're balancing the two, and it's set up to be a still camera. They tend to overheat because they weren't designed to dissipate heat. This camera is designed to dissipate heat.
Show that again, because Robert
FX3.
Shoji's asking what that thing is sticking out of the camera. That looks like a small rig mini HDMI to full size. I have those.
Okay,
Yeah, so
I
that's
have a small rig cage.
Yeah.
Here's the first thing you do when you buy a DSLR camera. Get a cage.
Yeah.
Like this is a small rig cage, and what happens is when you drop the camera, not if, but when you drop the camera, it's going to fall on the sturdy little cage that sits on. It also gives you more mounting points. This thing that you just pointed out that's on the side is an HDMI to USB connector. If you stick a USB connector on the side of this camera,
It has a USB-C connector.
Yeah, it's got a USB. It's going to stick straight out, and it's really ginchy, and it's going to get broken. This is just a way of plugging that in there, and then if I rotate this, this is a add-on. I got to do everything backwards. Add-on from Small Rig. That's an HDMI port on the top. So you've basically connected this to the cage to be able to do that.
I just want to make
what that's for.
I need to make a warning disclaimer here about those, because I have bought many of those and all of them have failed. Not in terms of Actually, one did fail like completely, but I've owned many of those, and within 6 months, and I just want to say I don't take my cameras out in the field. They stay in a temperature-controlled studio environment. Those adapters from Small Rig have continually failed on me. I don't know what it is about the jacketing on the wire, but within 6 months, the jacketing on that wire disintegrates and exposes the raw wires underneath. And I've had cameras just go completely black. And when I go up to them and I look at them, the wire is exposed and it's damaged. And I complained about this to Small Rig, and they were nice enough to be very responsive, and free of charge, they sent me replacements for every single one that fails. But I expect that when I buy these, I'm buying extras because in 6 months, they just stop working, and other people have complained about this too. So I don't know what they're doing with that thing. In general,
HDMI
I love
is
Small Rig products. But
HDMI, just like USB, is Ginchi connected. There's a lot of contacts that have to be made there to make it work. There's even issues with HDMI cables. Some just work great, and some don't work for crap on your Sony camera. Gerald Undone does a great little short on the difference between HDMI cables. Some work, some don't. The same is true with the little adapters. I would suggest that if it's critical, go to like a Tilta HDMI adapter or a Condor Blue. Those are the two brands that I like personally. They're much more robust and more expensive. The Small Rig is just a great all-around price point. And like I said, I got this whole cage for this ZVE10 for, I don't know, like it's like $150, something like that. And I have a Tilta, God knows why, on my Sony FX3, which is sitting back behind a teleprompter that I never touch. It's really usable. I got it for bragging rights, I guess. And that's a bit more expensive, probably order of 3.
Tilta makes
more
good
expensive.
Stuff. Tilta makes good stuff.
Yeah,
too.
Tilta's great.
And as an alternative to
Condor Blue, it's great.
Yeah, Condor Blue is good. And as an alternative to, I found that Cable Matters actually makes a right angle mini HDMI to full size female HDMI, and then all you need to do is just get yourself. There's a company that makes these little rubber plugs that screw into the 1/4-20 mounts on the camera cage, and that's how I secure all the cables. I think it's Sprig is the company that do. You should just buy a big bag of those Sprig rubber things that just plug in there, and then you can just secure.
Oh, that was the stuff that Alex came back from the NAB.
Yeah,
the guy that had the little booth.
I have bought so many of those. They're so incredibly useful.
Yeah, it's cool. Anyhow, we're talking about cameras right now. If you just tuned in and you're wondering why is a radio show talking about cameras, again, to reiterate, I think video is now an important part of everything that we do. If we're the new to the old, we'll go back to that again for a second. Old days of radio, just a microphone, maybe occasional snapshots from the local newspaper. Nowadays, you get the TV crews coming around. You've got people shooting videos because like Delamitri or Davy Jones or some, old stuff or new stuff. But if you have a local artist or somebody coming through, there's gonna be some publicity involved, and people are going to be very interested. So why don't if they build new studios for radio, why not make it video friendly? In fact, they do have stuff that makes it easier and easier. And the fact that we're doing a YouTube broadcast using equipment that cost thousands of dollars versus what it would have cost 30 years ago or 4 decades ago, which would have cost close to $1 million. I mean, it's amazing. Yeah, once you had a Grass Valley switcher,
really some
kind of a DVE and a Chiron to do this, it's an amazing change it's a sea change in the quality, because with my ATEM, which costs like $1,000, I guess you've got an ATEM, you can have a whole TV studio in a box. And I just spotted the new Roland 8-channel video switcher with the T-bar, which I love. I think that's the one to get nowadays, but it's $3,000. But still, to me, that sounds is worth it.
So here's the thing:
because we're not spending that kind of money that we used to spend.
I love my ATEM Extreme ISO; it's incredible value for money. But one thing, as somebody who's actually used Roland switchers before, and I've gotten my hands on some of their higher end stuff, those things are built so much better in terms of the build quality. They may not have all the bells and whistles, and yes, they are 2 to 3 times more money, but the Roland switches are built in Japan with care and love, with high quality components. Even their cheaper switchers, like the little 4-channel, I forget the model, V01 HD something plus. That thing, the chassis is solid metal. It has the T-bar, Mitch, that you love. And it's, I just realized I'm on the wrong shot. There we go. Cut to that. At least people can see
I'm playing T-bar.
But yeah,
that's the
Mitch
thing. It
loves
looks
the
like a T.
T-bar,
That
and the Roland
looks like
stuff
a gear shift.
The Roland stuff has the T-bar, and they're really well-built products. And the reliability, I have to say, is definitely higher. The quality of the buttons are higher, but you're paying for that, right? It's going to be more expensive. And I find a lot of people in the corporate world too. I see more Roland switchers a lot. A lot of us are fanboys of Blackmagic stuff, and they have their place too. But I have to say that the Roland stuff is they're very well built. You get what you pay for
yeah,
sure.
and look, you can step up to the really professional stuff, the stuff that's switching your favorite TV channels live, whether it's for a talk show or sporting event. You're going to see things called Ross switchers and other stuff that's made by very high-end companies, and I'm just scratching the surface of the high-end stuff. You wouldn't see an ATEM in a big expensive sports truck that's doing the Super Bowl. They just wouldn't. They just wouldn't push video through that. Roland's been at it longer than anybody else. They've been doing it longer than ATEM, Blackmagic. Blackmagic just hits a sweet spot. It's just an enabling technology. And to that, my hat's off to you. Speaking of hair, what's with the hair on our show? Like, I got a haircut. You got your tuft is gone. It's like what's happening? What's happening to us?
Summertime.
Next, you know what it's going to be? Next thing, we're going to do an entire show using vocal fry.
Nobody wants
the
to.
The show will be talking vocal fry.
We're already dropping viewers now just by you doing that. So no, we don't want to do that.
They're gone.
We don't want to do that.
Come back.
I might have to boot you from the show if you start doing that.
Hit that subscribe button. Come on, we need you.
Exactly.
Let me just grab your hand and push it, and push that subscribe button for you. If you're just too lazy to do it, we did just go up. We got 101 subscribers, so we're climbing the ladder. I would love to hear somebody like Mr. Beast, Mr. Beast, and Joe Rogan, these big guys out there. Where were they after 20 shows? How many subscribers did they have? I'm just curious.
I don't know
what's the curve?
About Mr.
Is it
Beast.
like super low?
I don't know about Mr. Beast, but he was early on in the YouTube game, right? So I think what I noticed. This is the trend: people that jumped on the podcasting game and YouTube right at the beginning, when those platforms were brand new, were able to build an audience. I'm not saying it was easy, but it was a lot easier 15 years ago on YouTube than it is now, because they're just everybody and their grandma wants to have a YouTube show. And back then it was a new, exciting platform and there was nothing else like it before, right? So I feel that it was a lot easier back then. Joe Rogan, remember, he was a comedian before and he was an actor before. And coming off of news radio, he already had a bit of a following. So
I thought he was a bodybuilder or a fighter or something like that.
No. He already had a bit of a following there. I mean, news radio was a success. That was a big show, and then
he was on that show.
Oh
okay,
yeah,
good.
yeah. He was on that show, and he's a stand-up comedian, so people know him from that. So he already had a bit of a following.
Seems pretty serious for a stand-up comedian.
He's pretty funny. I've seen some of his stuff. I mean, it's not forever. Again, we're getting into an area where it's like comedians, you either take it or leave it. Some people like certain comedians and other people's don't, right? So I don't want to get into that. A lot of people don't like Joe Rogan and his show, and I'm not here to really talk about it. We're just talking about how these guys got their start. So just remember that they already had an existing audience that kind of followed them around, is all I'm saying.
I got something I'd like to ask you about, and that is when we decided, I kind of decided, and then we decided, because this show is as much yours as it is mine now. So you are the last angry DJ also. or maybe you're the first angry DJ. I don't know. But anyhow, the point I'm trying to say is that I was reluctant to do any kind of podcasting because there's too many washed up old disc jockeys that are coming on and thinking that just because they're on a podcast, the people were going to listen to them, that they're interesting, they have things to say. And I always thought that it's kind of sad in a way. And I did not want to be just another feel sorry for him or, oh dear, now he's trying to scrape the bottom of the barrel. He's doing podcasting. Anyhow, until we have something to say and something to contribute, I didn't really buy into it. I think we're contributing something now, and we will as long as people watch. But the thing that's different, and I'm told that I'm misnaming, we're not doing a podcast right now. We're doing a video podcast. Is that a new thing, doing a video podcast, and then it gets converted to audio only? Is that a new trend?
Okay, so
what's this all about?
Let me speak to this just for a sec. Okay, so technically, it's not a podcast. A podcast uses RSS as a technology, right? And RSS is really simple, it's really simple syndication, I think is what it's called. But it's basically an XML file with a bunch of metadata. It's basically a bunch of gobbledygook that points to a URL of an audio file. Now, that's how it got its start, and eventually video was added later, but it's technically, to call it a video podcast, it would have to be inside of an RSS feed on a podcast platform like Apple's iTunes podcast directory, right? So calling a YouTube show a podcast, I'm a bit more flexible now than I was a few years ago. Now you can't call it a podcast unless it's an RSS feed, right? But I would say it is a podcast, whatever, just roll with it. So, but that's
well,
how I feel about
it can evolve. They had AM, FM, and now it's Amen.
What I have a problem with, though, is anybody that calls a podcast a radio show. That is patently false. They're nowhere near alike. Other than the fact that we're talking on a microphone, podcasts and radio, they're not alike. Radio is when we're saying radio, and Robert Shoji's asking about this too. Radio is terrestrial, right? I mean, Mitch, when someone says radio, do you think of anything else other than terrestrial? Maybe satellite too, but it's broadcasting out
radio
there
is
using older methods.
Is broadcasting electronic waves out into the ether on a designated frequency. It's not describing the conversation or the content.
But radio is not a podcast. It's not using the internet.
Right.
They may distribute it on the internet as well as on the radio, but it's not. It's a podcast isn't radio. I really hate it when people just say, "Oh, podcast, that's like radio, right?" Well, no, it isn't. It's a new medium.
Well, it's becoming a catch basin term, like Xerox, or make a Xerox of that, or a copy of that, or Kleenex. It's like it covers a lot of territory. And the other thing is that nowadays, if you do radio, you need to be able to do a podcast, to be able to do video, do social media, be able to create memes. You have to have a lot of talents and wear a lot of hats, like we were talking about, I guess, last week. It's not just one thing anymore. It's a whole mixed bag of things. You just can't have a successful radio station broadcasting radio waves in front of a microphone, playing music or talk or whatever it is, without having a podcast or social media content. Or it's like you're trying to be all of those things. So it's sort of like a mishmash. To making it so maybe it's been detrimental to the solidity of what broadcasting used to be, but I think it's opening. They're opening our heads and exposing people to all kinds of different content.
Mitch, your Rolodex of friends in the broadcasting industry is much greater than I. So I will ask you this question. I don't know if you've heard this from anybody that's working in the industry currently or has recently worked in the industry. But I have heard and witnessed a lot of snobbery of people that work in broadcasting. Oh, podcasts, you're a podcaster. Oh, really? Right? It's just kind of like, oh, you're in that little corner. You that's cute. You do your little thing over there while the adults are getting paid for their shows. Right? So I don't know how you feel about that. I feel like it's loosened up a little bit, that people aren't necessarily so snobby anymore, but I think there's still some snobbery out there for podcasting. Have you heard anything at all?
we're talking human nature. I mean, people that have spent years crafting their presentation, always going to be a bit of a snob towards somebody that just jumps in and does it naturally or is working the same route. Even when I was in radio and I was a young DJ when I got into the business, especially a big market, and I won't go into all of that, but I got hazed by the old timers. They hazed me because I was the young 19-year-old. They called me smart aleck college kid, which I didn't go to college, but they called me that. Yeah, I think so. I think people are very protective of their craft. And if you're new, then you're a greenhorn. If you're on the deadliest catch, hauling in crates of fish. It's just a protective mechanism that I think people have. You got to pay your dues to be able to get there.
Right,
so,
and it's easy to get pissed off.
Of it.
It's easy to get pissed off when when a new medium kind of becomes disruptive, like podcasts, where anybody with a microphone and internet access can now have a show. So I can understand how, some people get very angry. They're like, look, dude, I've spent decades perfecting my craft. Do you have any idea how hard it is, the amount of prep involved to do a good show and to keep an audience? And then here comes the modern day internet, broadband comes along, and this podcasting medium comes along, and now anybody can have a show. And then YouTube comes along, further disrupts it again. And now so now you don't need millions of dollars to be on TV. You can have a YouTube show. You can build an audience, and you can make money eventually.
This is very much like many businesses are being disrupted by technology, and this is probably another good conversation to have. I have a living producing videos for corporate clients, pharmaceutical companies, political candidates, whoever you are. We go out, we shoot video, we bring it back, we craft and edit it, we add video and graphics and sound, and we craft a presentation, whether it's for a commercial, for 30 seconds or 60 seconds, whatever. To do that, when I got out of the radio business, it used to take, well, here's my analogy. What used to take millions of dollars to buy electronic gear and cameras and lenses and stuff, and thousands of square feet and hundreds of people, it was I'll call it a country club admission. You couldn't join the country club unless you were able to invest a large sum of money. And then once you got there, you protect that turf by being competitive. Nowadays, all that stuff's been replaced by somebody that can call Black Magic Design, and for $1,000 or $2,000 can have a halfway decent camera, et cetera, et cetera. Well, so there is a bit of snobbery associated with that. But here's the thing. The thing that gets forgotten in the mix, other than the pure ridiculousness of people picking on younger people or being the last angry DJ, if you were, is that the most important things about, for example, in the video business, and maybe the same with radio, is the story. So you have a story to tell. I don't care what kind of equipment you're using to accomplish that. The story's first. The script that's written is first. Your presentation as a radio presenter or disc jockey, your content is first. It doesn't make any difference how many people or what kind of microphone you have or all that other stuff. That sort of window dressing adds on to it. But the most important thing is the content. You think about the cinema business. Cinema goes back hundreds of years, and the technology or the description of what it is that you do, all the ways that you move the camera in for a shot, for a dolly, a jib, or all that technology. That's stuff that's been around, and it's like the equipment has changed, but the description of it and the utilization of that as a mechanism to tell a story has not. And so many people forget that it's not about the tech. It's not about the podcast. It's not about YouTube. It's about, if you have a story to tell, it's a compelling story, then tell it, but don't rely on the gear to make it. Because you can have the gear, and all of a sudden you're looking around saying, well, what am I going to do now?
And
it doesn't give, it's not automatic.
And I have to say, it's not even about the money necessarily, too, because to me, I've seen so many incredibly well-written, just great storytelling in indie movies that were made on these shoestring budgets that were far superior than any multi-hundred, 200 million, 300 million. they're getting into these ridiculous budgets now. So I think you're absolutely right. You don't have to spend that much money, because I think if somebody has the chops to write something and tell a good story, and actually I would make an argument that having limitations on your technology can actually help drive the creativity and come up with ways to do things that still look good and sound good without spending that kind of money, because you're forced to be creative. You're forced to think on your feet, especially for
Yeah, but don't
indie
you think we've
filmmakers.
gone too far with it? Don't you think that movies now have to be giant blockbusters, and they spend $250 million to do another
totally.
Marvel movie, and it's getting farther and farther away from the story and the interesting parts of the movie, and more into special effects and things like that. I just feel overwhelmed by it now. I just saw the
Well, I think
the
people are
latest
getting.
Ghostbusters,
I haven't
and
watched
it's
it
like,
yet.
okay, they have a couple cameo appearances in it. There are too many people doing too many different things with a really bad story and special effects that it's like it's lost its heart, it's lost its soul. And that's the thing that bothers me. And if I'm going to be a snob about anything, I'll be a snob about that.
Mitch, are you angry? Are you a little angry about
I am
this?
the last angry disc jockey
You're
person.
living up to that title,
old
man.
guy.
You're living it up.
Why don't we steer for a second into ageism? That's something that's starting to really make me angry. I know it's becoming a political thing, and
Did
we won't get
something,
into the politics of it.
Something happened recently, or?
Well, it's happening all around us. Look at the presidential campaign. It's a major issue of the age of the president and the president pro tem, as it were. That's now becoming an issue. Like, is he too old? Can he do that? Let me just speak to ageism for a second, and then you can have a rebuttal if you feel it's necessary. But if you think about, and we did touch on this last week with Mike Rossi, sorry, used his other name, is that the demographic age group of people my age, I just turned 70 this week, 7-0. I never thought I'd get there. So this is 70.
You look great.
Oh, thanks. But it's not all about looks. It's just the immediate built-in, feeling that people think that 7-year-old guy, he can't do video, he can't do a podcast, he can't do this, he can't do that. It's like all these things I'm running into. It's very hard out there to make a living when you're at this age. It's because all these built-in problems that come along with it. It used to be about people of different persuasions being picked on. I'm willing to say that ageism is one of those things that's now being picked on. And if you're going to be a woke person, start thinking about people my age that can still have something to contribute. So I'm running into that problem, and it's starting to tick me off a little bit.
Mitch, it ticks me off too, because I hear people even at work with the way there's a general lack of respect for our elders, I think, with a whole new generation. And I very much, ever since, I mean, I don't know if I'm unique or anything, but ever since I was a kid, I always looked forward to being an adult. I didn't want to be a kid. I didn't like it when people called me a kid, even though I was a kid. And I always looked up to my elders, and I think there's just a general lack of respect for people that are older and wiser and more experienced. Even the term, and I'm gonna swear, I don't care. I'm gonna throw an F-bomb. I fucking hate when people say, "Hey, boomer." To me, that's a cop-out.
I've never heard that.
Let's
go, "Hey, boomer."
Let's raise the intelligence in the room a little bit. Let's have a more intelligent conversation than just throwing out that word, "Hey, boomer." It's just like, let's not all blame an entire generation for problems, right?
People like to put other people in a box. That's probably one of the major problems with society, since we're on a negative jag here. They want to put you into a box because you're Greek, you're Italian, you're Jewish, whatever the case may be. That they're not happy unless they can throw you in a box of some kind, or that your age, you're old guy, or you're too young, or you're a terrestrial broadcaster, not a podcaster. I mean, that's just what people do. They throw you in a box. We got to get over that. We got to just treating people like people and letting them have the benefit of the doubt, and let you be be all you can be, and then be it and do the best you can. I'm willing to be judged as an old guy that's 70 years old, and I'm a geezer, whether or not this is contributing anything interesting from an entertainment standpoint or an understanding, that's probably what I really want to happen. And I don't want to speak for Alex here, but an understanding of what goes through my head. So I may be able to talk well and have a conversation a little bit better than the average person. I've been trained to be able to do that. But I'm an old guy doing that. And maybe, just maybe, I can enlighten folks a little bit that just because I'm 70 now doesn't mean that I can't contribute anything anymore, that I can't be good at doing video, or I can't be good at doing voiceover work, or I can't be good if I went back on the radio. Right. Those are things that concern me about the ageism curse. And I wish people would get behind us like they get behind all the other things that they get behind. They're getting behind the woke society that, this person comes from this, particular group of people. It's like, well, what about us older folks? Come on.
I 100% backing what you just said. I see this every day, and it bugs me too. And I wish more people would think about this and have conversations about this. And it just occurred to me too. And sometimes I don't know how other people perceive it, because I haven't asked them and I haven't heard feedback, and I don't know how you feel about this. And I feel somewhat self-conscious even about doing this kind of show with someone like you, who is a seasoned broadcaster who had a very successful career. And I'm not a broadcaster in the traditional sense. I mean, I do shows, I do podcasts and stuff like that. I've never been paid to be on the radio. I've had some training, but I've never been paid. I never had the career that you did. And so in some respect, I feel weird doing a show even like this with someone like you, because who am I? Who am I to talk about broadcast? Why am I even talking about an older medium, right? And of course I grew up with it, but why am I talking about an industry that I've never worked in, other than the fact that I talk on a microphone? But to me, I find it fascinating, and I find these conversations, you and I, and with people in the industry, I find these conversations fascinating, because I'm curious about people's experiences in the industry, and I find these topics fascinating. But do you think it's weird that I'm on a show like this?
No, not at all, Alex. Good on you for thinking the way you're thinking. I give you a lot of respect. And if anything, I feel the same way about working with a young guy like like yourself.
That's funny.
Well, what do I have that I can contribute to him? You seem to ask great questions that I love to answer. And at the same time, you're helping me bridge the gap to the way things were to the way things are. There's a really huge difference between, and this is part of that ageism thing again, that I have all kinds of cultural touch points that I grew up with that you don't have. And it makes me a little bit angry sometimes, but maybe I shouldn't be angry. Maybe I should be a little more understanding. And if you help me to be a little bit more politically correct, not to use pronouns like I used to, not to make statements that are genuinely misogynistic or sexist, then you're helping enlighten me to the way things are. So that connection to me, I think, is precious. I think that what you and I have here on this show and the connection that we have requires your patience to put up with a curmudgeon-y guy like me, and maybe a little patience on my side not to be instantly judgmental because, okay, you had 2 years of radio school and no, you didn't do the same things that I did. You've done a lot of other things, and you have talent in technical and podcasting. I don't have any of that. So I'm going to ask you this question. When I said on office hours that I want to do a podcast, and I think I'm going to call it The Last Angry DJ, you jumped right in and said, I'm in. I want to do this.
Yeah.
Why? Why were you so quick to raise your hand and want to make it on the program?
Well, it was timing, because I used to, first of all, I've had a bit of a hiatus from doing my own content. I've been focusing on doing productions for other people. And I used to have, not a lot of people know this, but I used to have a podcast network, and I had 6 shows that I was doing on a weekly basis. And I did that for a long time, well over a decade, and I just got burnt out. And so there was about a 3-year hiatus where I just was not doing anything for me. And so when I had the opportunity to do a new show, I just felt simpatico with you because of us doing office hours together, and I felt like I could do it, and I felt like we could do something interesting. So that's why I did it. I felt like any passion project, I felt like there's something I want to say and I'm not saying it, and I feel like maybe someone else would be interested in hearing it. And I mean, I guess you could say that for anything. It's like, why do anything? There's a reason that's driving you to do it, and so the timing worked out, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, the timing's good. And if you were to say something that was patently false, I mean, by all standards that we hold true, I would probably call you out on it, but you're not. You're resonating with, you're making things understandable. You're helping me understand how to relate to people of your generation a lot better without having the built-in prejudices that exist out there. Let's face it, this is one of the toughest things, and I'm going to lean into the camera here a little bit and make my point. People don't talk anymore. If they're from different boxes in life, where they've been stuffed in one box or another one, they don't have common points of view where they could carry on a conversation that goes beyond just, well, here's my political views and here's what I like and what I don't like. You don't reach beyond that to understand the other person's point of view. You're doing that, and it's some hope for the human race, as it were, is when an old guy like myself and a younger guy like yourself, a boomer, if you wish, are able to have an intelligent conversation like this about things in general and have it be entertaining and informative. And obviously, from the amount of chat we've got going on here, people are digging this conversation. So I'm kudos to you and kudos to me, I guess, for doing it. But maybe someday we'll get tired of doing it. Maybe someday we've exhausted all the possible subjects. I don't think that's coming any day soon. We're up to show 19 now.
I don't like to think about that, because I just feel like with any kind of creative endeavor, I think you pour your heart and soul into it, and you keep doing it as long as you think it's worth it, and you're still doing something of value that people are interested in doing. And you just know when it's time to hang up the curtain. You just know when it is. It just comes naturally. So I don't want to think about artificially putting an end to something just because, there's no rule that says, you have to do this show for 2 or 3 years or 5 years, and then you have to call it quits. I think
I'm with you. I'm with you on that.
You come to that point naturally. And I just want to say there's a couple really nice comments, and I want to address this in the chat.
Oh, go ahead. And while you're reading those, let me just say, if you want to encourage us and make sure we're on the right, hit the subscribe button and the like button, because those are the only ways we have of telling that we're doing the right thing, and from the comments that Alex is going to say.
So I just wanted to address this. So Beauty Bubble in the chat saying, very nice thing, saying the universe likes the two of you, basically saying that that's why we've made the connection that we have. And also Shoji Productions says, he thinks Alexander is more angry than Mitchell, but in a good way. So I'll take that compliment, Robert. Thank you.
Beauty Bubble and Shoji, Robert, I always liked your point of view. You were a born documentarian because you don't stop asking questions. So your observations are appreciated. I've taken the time to understand who you are and what you're about, and you've done the same thing. Another point to what you just said, Alexander, before we get a few more of those comments in here, I want to once again publicly thank the folks at Office Hours, and specifically Alexander Lindsay, Alex Lindsay, who created the program. I did it for 3 years. It's been around at least 4 years, and all volunteers, no sponsors. It's people just doing what they love to do, talking about the things they love to talk about, and there is no rewards on it, and yet it's still going just as strong as it was. So it taught me a lot of things that I didn't, and if anything, prepared me to be able to do my own podcast. So I want to get that out there, that I want to thank Alex, Lindsay, and the rest of the crew that I work with. And I still have all of them as friends, which is, with the possible exception of a few. Most of them are still friends. So That kind of, if that's what it took to get to where we are right now, great. You got any other good comments from folks?
Yeah, I think that was those were all of them. Oh, Ernesto just jumped in the chat, so he's on the stream now. So
New friend, hello Ernesto.
Good to see you there. And yeah, I agree with everything that you're saying. And look, I mean, we're all evolving, you know, and this is going back to the ageism thing. I do not for a second believe that just because you turn a certain age that you're stuck in your ways, you're not capable of learning new things. I think that's a cop-out. Anybody says, it's too late for me. I hear, even from my parents, my mom is horrible in this way. She was like, it's too late for me. It's too late to get into shape. It's too late to follow my passions, and I'm stuck doing what I'm doing. And it's like, yeah, okay, if you're gonna have that attitude, yeah, I guess you are done. That's so finite, and I just don't believe that. I believe that if you want to do something, you should at least try to do it and see if that's something that you enjoy doing. And we're all growing. I'm going to continue to show up on this show. I just realized again, I'm on the wrong camera. Sorry, everyone. Let's just do that for a bit. I
hate to be on the camera this long.
I'm gonna continue to show up every week for as long as I can, because I enjoy being here, and I think it makes me a better person. I think it makes me a better communicator, and I'm here to learn from you, Mitch, because you have a lot to offer. As much as you think that you don't think you can do this type of thing on the radio anymore, which I think you could do. He's crying. He's starting to choke up.
Sorry.
Hang in there, buddy. Anyways,
I'm hanging in.
I'm getting.
First of all, I don't think I could do the show without you. I don't know if I'd want to do the show because I've had it pretty good here for the last 19 episodes. So let's keep it going, pal. If you need more credit, if you want to put your name above mine, I think the other thing is that what I'm surprised at, I thought having good guests was all that we needed to have here. We are the last angry whatever, and these conversations apparently resonate with a lot of people. So we're going to do more of the Alex and Mitch conversations, because I think we're hitting deeper subjects that we can't hit quite so well with people we don't necessarily know that well.
Absolutely.
But we get a lot of input. So yeah, we'll have guests. Please suggest who you would like to see, like more radio guys that were on the air, more technical people. I was talking to Alexander before we were on the air. I said, maybe we should show what it takes to do a show like this. We were talking about cameras a little bit earlier, cameras and microphones and equipment.
That might be too much,
all that stuff
behind the scenes. But you know what? I don't know. You're right, Mitch. We should probably ask the audience. If anybody's watching right now or listening right now, let us know either in the chat right now or in our Discord or in our email, hello@thelastangrydj.com. Do you want to see more technical stuff? Do you want to know more about how things get made? If you have any comments or suggestions, do let us know, because that helps us do a better show, because we don't want to just sit here and talk about things that nobody else is interested in, right? So let us know.
Yeah, and we won't. We promise we won't gear shame. We love doing that. We won't gear shame you if you call up and say, "Yeah, I've got a Logitech 920 camera, and how can I make it better?" I said, "Well, you can make it better by grabbing your nearest garbage can and throwing it in there and getting a FX30 or."
Come on, Mitch! Don't say
360.
that. Everybody starts.
What kind of camera do you have? I mean, can I gear shame? What kind of camera do you have there?
Well, it's not as nice as a full-frame camera, Mr. Sony Snob. I've got a Panasonic Lumix GH5, which is a micro four
Lumix
thirds.
is a nice camera. I'll reach out and say that.
Your sensor is bigger than mine. What can I say?
Well, hey, look, a bigger sensor is good for low light conditions. Well, guess what? The light conditions in this room haven't changed since I started doing this broadcast. So, yeah, great. It'll work great if I turn all the lights out.
The audience wants Steven Stryker back. Vintage Nouveau is saying, bring Steven Stryker back. And I absolutely...
Steve's a smart guy.
100%. I am with you, Vintage Nouveau. We should absolutely bring Mr. Stryker back, because he was great on the first episode.
I suspect that's one of his friends, but I agree. I talk to Steve almost on a daily basis, and he's a good dude. And he's also a smart person. He's one of the smartest people I know, so I enjoy conversation. I talked to him today. Before we went on, and we were talking about he's going to make a trip somewhere and he wants to document the trip. What kind of a microphone would be good for him and his friend to be able to talk at the same time while they were narrating, working with an iPhone or a DJI camera? What would be a good setup? And I steered him towards a DJI Mic 2, which is a wireless mic box for about $300. I mean, that's the kind of stuff we could talk about. That's fun, technical. Yeah. And Steve is a smart guy. So thanks for the input. You sure Steve didn't promote himself? He's been very reluctant to come back on because he doesn't want to step outside his area. But see, that's exactly the wrong attitude to have, because for the exact same reasons that Alexander was saying, you have something to contribute to this dialogue. And the fact that you're an attorney and you have a radio background makes you very special. So that's all I don't want to inflate his ego too much bigger than it already is. But yes, I agree. Let's have Steve back. And let's have some people that we haven't thought of. There's some people in the business that would be nice to have them on here. Maybe we should invite some folks that have podcasts. Maybe we should have some people from Twit on. Maybe we should have some people from more people. We've had some from Office Hours on here. I'd like to have Guy Cochran on, or Chris Fenwick, or some of the other characters that make that program. They're interesting people, and they have opinions just like we do. And just because they don't have own a bunch of radio stations doesn't mean they're any less interesting, because we've had people that have owned groups of radio stations, and we've had people on that have one or two radio stations, and they're both very interesting and compelling for what they have to say. So it's just a great venue for having a conversation. I think that if Alex and I were not to complain, but to encourage, we would like to have more dialogue with our viewers and our listeners. And it doesn't all have to be done real time like we do when we record on Sundays. It can be done after the fact. You can put your comments in there. It's been opened now, so you can comment after the fact. And I believe you can comment on audio podcast. I don't watch them as much, or listen to them as much as I should. Well, how many different ways can people comment on what they're hearing and seeing?
Yeah, so there's no
comment.
On? I mean, with audio podcasts, you're limited to leaving reviews on Apple's platform, which, by the way, only works through the Apple Podcast app, which is by far the most popular podcast app out there because it's just included with iPhones. But yeah, you can only leave reviews. There's no real commenting system there. It's kind of a one-way thing. Unfortunately, there's no real listener engagement there. You just have to have, this is why you have to build your own community. But going back to the guest thing, one guest I think would be really interesting to have here, Mitch, is Jason Howell, who used to be on Twit, but now has his own podcast called AI Inside. And he's been doing podcasts for decades, cool. Right? And
let's ask him.
He's a really interesting guy. I think we should try to reach out to him, see if he's interested in talking about how podcasts have evolved. And again, we always like to try to bridge the gap between old medium and new medium, and like how does he see? Be interesting to get his perspective, how he sees the industry changing, and podcasts. Certainly, even podcasts are evolving and changing, and things are changing dramatically there. I mean, just like with advertising alone, right? I mean, advertising has sort of shrunk a little bit, both in radio and in the podcast world. So I would love to get his perspective on that.
By all means, let's bring him on. If anybody knows him, suggest that reach out to us. And what's our best reach out? Hello at the Last Angry DJ. Is it the best one?
Yeah,
just give us a thumbs up, and we'll get in touch with you.
Email address is hello@thelastangrydj.com. And if you are on the Discord server, you can always hit us up there as well.
Why is it Discord is more popular with younger people than it is with guys our age, my age?
I will
tell
you exactly why.
Another thing, I'm still using AOL. What's up with that?
Yeah, so Discord started off as a way of communicating for people that were into gaming, and then it just kind of, I'm not exactly sure what caused it to broaden from just being interested by gamers, but now everybody uses it. It's kind of like Slack, if you've ever used Slack for communicating, which, by the way, Slack is now very focused on businesses, and in the corporate world, Slack is still primarily used, but Discord has now become, it's gone beyond just a way of communicating for people that are gamers, one another. And, it's expanded. So now podcasters use it, businesses use it to build out these incredible communities. It has audio video capabilities. You can do voice chats, you can do video chats. It's not the video quality, it's gotten better, but it's not fantastic. It's not as good as Zoom, but it does have those capabilities. It is built in there. So
it's like crack cocaine, folks. Once you get in there,
he had to go there.
You can snort it, you can shoot it, you can do whatever you need to, but we don't recommend that. I guess we should have on it. I mentioned her name earlier, and I did it incorrectly. Keely Dunn is an expert on Discord, so maybe Keely would have a good guess because it could really make you better. If you're still using MySpace or AOL, AOL to me means I am too old. So I will use that term there. So AOL is like, yeah, okay. The big thing that AOL had going for it was they had all those dial-up servers, and nobody uses that anymore. So don't use, well, I shouldn't say don't use it, but there are better things out there. I still use Outlook, on my PC, and I have it just for that. So there are better ways to communicate. I love how the connectivity of Apple products, so that if I do something on my M1 shows up here on my old Apple iPhone 6. I always used to brag on office hours. See how great it is? It's small, and it has a headphone jack. It has an actual headphone jack on it. And Alex Lindsay used to say, "Oh, isn't that cute?" It's a phone, folks. I use it as a phone, not as a camera.
Yeah, but that's the problem. Nobody cares about phone calls anymore, Mitch. Nobody cares.
I guess not.
We care about apps. We want apps. The main reason why I upgrade my iPhone is because of the camera. I have to say the camera is the single feature that causes me to upgrade, because this is the thing that is in my pocket every single day. So I want this to be the best possible
I regretted the heck out of dumping my landline. That really hurt to make that.
Give me a break.
Getting rid of a landline. I took my fax machine.
The one where you get all the
trash,
spam calls.
The dumpster.
The one where you get all the spam calls. Would you like?
No, I get my spam calls now on my. You know what I think? All those telemarketers. We should do a show just on how to get rid of them. But my thing is, if you're running for office and you have a way of eliminating telemarketers, or here's my option: all telemarketers should pay for our phone service. So if you have an iPhone, the telemarketers should pay for the service. We shouldn't have to pay for it. So that's my solution there. What are you going to do?
I get so...
Am I ranting?
I
promised I wouldn't rant.
I was poking fun of you for having a landline where you only get spam phone calls, but I have to say on cell phones now, I get so many robocalls now that there's a feature on the iPhone called Silence Unknown Callers. So if you're not in my address book, it doesn't even ring through. I have disabled my voicemail because all I get is robocalls, and they're all leaving messages. It's some Chinese company, and I just get these Chinese messages. I don't know why, but it's all I get now for phone calls. So,
remember the Jerky Boys back in the early '90s?
Those guys were funny.
They were funny before. I guess they got thrown off the air.
The movie's funny. The Jerky Boys.
Oh, they have a movie. I'll have to look at that. But I'm convinced that I've got somebody's phone is binging here. I'm going to start recording some of the calls I have from telemarketers, because I go after them. I completely and totally go after them. I had a guy that was calling me on a regular basis about solar power from my home. And I stop me if I've told this story before, but my latest thing is, and if I affect an old Jewish guy's voice, it's purely coincidental. But I'm like, solar power from my home? That's wonderful. Where does it all come from? And the guy says, well, it's the sun. We're stealing power from the sun? What's going to happen? The sun is going to go dark. Oh, my God. And I just go off on him. He said, oh, no, that's not the way it works. He said, but it's got to come from somewhere. It's getting dark outside right now. So, I know. Again, I'm ranting. I hope that's entertaining for somebody.
I think that there's some entertainment value. I'm sensing a radio bit somewhere. I feel like that should be broadcast somewhere on the radio.
Oh, absolutely.
Do you know who? By the way, do you know who Art Bell is?
Why does that sound familiar?
Anyways, he very famous broadcaster, but he did all these kind of crazy call-ins. People would be calling in about UFOs, and in real time they're chasing. They're chasing after the UFO, and the guy's driving in a at night in his road trying to chase this. Get footage. It's all just nonsense. It's just all ridiculous. Look up Art Bell.
Radio guys used to do that all the time.
It's hilarious.
But here's the thing: a lot of them are faked because the FCC stepped in and said you cannot record a spoof call by calling somebody at random in the phone book without letting them know that they're being recorded. So that kind of gets the cat out of the bag. But you can't call somebody and fake it. And I think that it's the same as somebody calls you and you spoof them and offer them, low interest, no load mutual bonds or whatever the story might be. You're going to get in trouble for spoofing them or faking it or pretending you're with the FCC or the Federal Communications Commission, whatever. So you got to be careful. A lot of those things aren't being done anymore because too many people have been sued over it. The thing I hate the most, since we're on the subject that I brought up, is when I'm talking to my bank about some problem or whatever, and they go, this is Linda Yablonsky calling on a recorded line. And I'm kind of, you're calling on a recorded line? Why? What for? For your protection, sir, and for our convenience, and possibly for training purposes, we're calling on a recorded line. And I say, well, where's my benefit on this? What am I going to get out of it? Am I going to get a recipe to how to make Sunday gravy for my spaghetti? And you know what you tell them is you say, well, hold on a second, I'm going to record this conversation too. You wouldn't believe how upset they get when they tell you, first of all, that they're recording you, and then you tell them, well, I'm recording you. And they go, oh, well, you can't do that. I'm saying, why can't I? I'm doing it for training services so we can compare notes after this conversation. They don't like, I'm going on a rant again, aren't I? Okay.
No,
now I'm living up to my name.
That's funny. It reminds me of that episode of Seinfeld where Jerry. Have you seen that episode where Jerry gets a call?
Yeah,
from a telemarketer.
Let me call you back.
It's like, why don't you give me your number and I'll call you right? Well, I'm sorry, we can't do that. Well, I guess now you know how I feel. Click. By the way, do you remember how satisfying it was back in the day with a landline and an analog phone to be able to just slam the receiver down, just like boom?
I hear you.
Good day, sir. And you can't.
Maybe there's an app for that. Maybe there's a way to. How to hang up on somebody with prejudice, so it makes sound.
It's not the same.
When these guys call to cajole you into changing your long distance services, and they're obviously calling from another country.
Right. Yeah.
Sometimes I've gotten inappropriately angry at them and told them that I wanted to keep them on the line longer because I was zeroing a cruise missile into their particular location. Some of these people, they actually get upset when you say, hold on a second. Yes, we've got you spotted in that warehouse on that corner there. Yes, I can. If you look out the window right now, the cruise missile is approaching. It's ready for impact. Again, I'm going off, aren't I?
You see how Mitch is a pro, by the way, when he was yelling, he backed off the mic. Now that is mic technique right there. Instead of over-modulating,
I'm going to do a whole show with vocal fracking, or I call fracking, it's frying.
Now that's too much. You've gone too far.
I can't fry my voice. It's already fried.
No, your voice is fine. You don't have any vocal fry. You're a seasoned broadcaster. You don't have that.
I can't. I tried to do it the other day.
You can't even do it. That's the thing. Even if you wanted to, right?
I can talk really low like this. Is this vocal frying?
It's that gravelly, the rasp.
I sound like Darth Vader.
It's at the back.
Do not underestimate
what it is? It's
the power
at the back
of the Force.
Your throat. It's not your diaphragm. That's the thing.
I have a diaphragm in my throat.
It's not. It's at the back of your throat. That's where that comes from. It's not. And you don't get that. The air in the diaphragm, that energy, it's right at the back. I have no other way to explain it other than it's at the back.
I agree. It's right an affectation. We used to have a thing where early in the days of broadcasting, when women were rightfully getting their positions of being broadcasters, they started doing a weird thing with their mouths when they talked. They would do what we used to call compression. They'd start talking kind of funny like this. And we figured that it was they unconsciously were trying to sound more macho in their capacity. They didn't have to. They could just sound like a woman. That's what she was. The person should be speaking the way what's normal for them. But that's how it kind of started out. And then it sort of went into the Valley Girl-ism. Okay, I agree. I just got a heads up. Stop talking about the subject you're on. Should we tell him what you just gave me a message on?
No, it's
You said we're losing people
not
with your
actually
your
supposed to
antics.
talk about back end notes on the show, Mitch. But since you've mentioned it, I think we may be
We're keeping it real here.
We may be
He's-
losing.
He was giving me a smackdown.
The cruise missile talks. I think some people might be getting
Too much.
It's a little
Sorry.
a little much. Sorry, everyone.
Sorry about that. What are you going to do?
Anyway.
Well, we just blasted through our normal show
This was
very
fun.
fast there, didn't we?
This
It was fun. So
and I think
why don't we do it again next week?
Well, we can do it again next week, and judging from what people are saying here, it seems that the people want to hear some more technical stuff. Somebody requested an entire hour talking about Sony cameras, so maybe we could have somebody who's an expert in Sony cameras come on the show. Somebody suggested Josh Kaufman to come on the show.
I did.
So
yeah, I think he'd be good. He's an expert, especially on the transition into the newer cameras from the older cameras.
do
hybrid
you know him?
transition.
Do you know him?
Josh? Sure,
Yeah.
I could ask him.
Yeah.
He'd probably love to do it.
All right.
So we could get him on, and my buddy Tom Shustak, we call him Too Tall Tom, is a brilliant cinematographer and knows his way around lenses. He knows all that technical, weaselly details. Lenses, the math involved in them is amazing to be able to get it to do what they do. And he knows them all. It's crazy. It's crazy what you can do with it. So, utilize our way to contact us and suggest topics, guests, areas that you thought were good, and things that we did wrong. We might have done a few things wrong. I know that I went off the rails here a little bit. I'm feeling my oats today, I guess. I don't know. Maybe I haven't had. It's low sugar. That's what it is. How do they get a hold of us?
Yep. So people can get a hold of us by going to hello. Actually, just email us, hello@thelastangrydj.com. Most of you are probably not going to want to do that. Of course, our Discord community as well. You can do that there. And also, what else? The QR code that was just on the screen there, that'll get you into Discord. And for those listening on Apple Podcasts, TuneIn, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, anywhere, if you are listening to the audio version, we would really appreciate if you could leave a review in your podcast app of choice. That helps other people find the show as well. And of course, on YouTube, drop a comment in there and subscribe. And that way you will get every single episode as these go out. Of course, a lot of people don't tune into the show live, and we understand that people are busy. They're off doing their thing on a Sunday. So that's why this show is on demand, available as well, whenever you feel like it on your commute to work.
And just another great show, just showing that we can do it without a guest from time to time. I know I went off the deep end a little bit, but that's what I do. It's like that 90-10% thing. I said I'm 90% pretty good. It's the 10% that gets me thrown off the air. So thanks again for your participation. Thanks for watching. I want to thank Alex for being a great guest and also a great interviewer. And the folks that are checking us out, don't forget, hit that subscribe button. I know we're going to talk about that just a little bit, but it's the only feedback that we get other than your comments, good or bad, that you're paying attention to what we're doing here, because we do this because we love you, we love this business, and just because I'm 70 doesn't mean that I just spit a little bit. Must be close to dinner time. Oh, P.F. Chang's is pulling up with my lunch, so there we go. Thanks again for your participation. Show number 20 next week. That should be fun. We'll have some fun doing that. In the meantime, just keep reaching for the stars, as Casey Kasem used to say. But make sure your feet are on the ground.